In 1873, a Chinese miner living in Oregon remembered, "I could not keep the tears from running down my cheeks when thinking about the miserable and needy circumstances of our home and thinking back to the time of our separation. Between 1849 and 1882, 132,000 Chinese men left everything in search of work in America to give their family a better life. What they received for their hard work was not praise, but hatred, discrimination, and violence. The most shocking display of racial hatred toward the Chinese in the American West was the massacre of Hell's Canyon in 1887, where 34 innocent miners were killed for $5,000 in gold. The crime was committed by a group of unlikely young Rough Riders and horse thieves from small, close-knit towns in rural Oregon. The event and the subsequent unjust murder trial was a prime example of the stark racial barriers enacted by nativist Americans against the Chinese in the West.
In the years leading up to the massacre, Chinese immigrants came by the thousands and pursued work in railroads, mines, and other jobs in the growing American West in order to send money back to their desperate families. The weakening of the Qing dynasty shattered the future outlook of millions of Chinese. With little government protection, over 20 million Chinese were killed in uprisings and rioting, compounded by huge food shortages. Even though these 100,000 laborers made up almost 90% of the workforce in the West by 1867, they were treated with low wages, discrimination, and faced threat of murder and violence daily. They were seen as unwanted intruders who would steal jobs, which led to racial hatred. By 1882, when the U.S. passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, the state of Oregon was home to over 9,000 of them, working mainly as gold miners. Hailing from the same clan in the Guangdong province and Panyu County in the village of Shoaling, the 34 miners who would be murdered in Hell's Canyon came to Oregon through San Francisco. The men worked for the Sam Yep Company, which controlled gold mines all over California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. In October 1886, the miners were sent to Lewiston, Idaho, where they headed 65 miles up the Snake River in 2 separate boats. They used poles and rope to get to their boats through the rapids and around rocky cliffs. One group of miners set up at Deep Creek on the Oregon side, while the rest went 3 miles further and set up at Salt Creek. Both locations were very rich in gold deposits.
On May 25, 1887, a group of small-time horse thieves from Oregon's Wallowa County were staying in a nearby cabin owned by George Craig, a local rancher. The thieves, led by a rancher named Bruce Blue Evans, had a family with 2 children and was held in high esteem in Wallowa County. Evans was accompanied by 6 locals, including one 15-year-old boy. The ragtag group were known to steal livestock in Oregon and smuggle them out of state. The group used the site near Deep Creek because it was remote with very shallow waters, allowing them to cross stolen horses easily.
We killed them for the gold. As you suggested, these were a gang of horse thieves who were stealing horses and taking them across into Idaho and, selling them for $50 or whatever the going price was at the time. And it was when they were looking for a crossing place or going to the regular crossing place, they saw the Chinese mining there, observed them for a while, saw them that they were taking gold, and then their motive was to get their gold.
As shots echoed through the canyon, the Chinese found themselves helpless with only one .22 caliber pistol in their possession. Upon running out of ammunition, one surviving miner was chased down, only to be pelted with rocks and wood until his death. Their lives, their possessions, and about $5,000 worth of gold were stripped from them in minutes. The killers destroyed the camp and fled the scene, leaving the mutilated bodies in the river.
Craig detailed the killings in a Works Progress Administration interview in 1936, 48 years after the trial. The Chinamen were 31 in number and all of them murdered. These Chinamen resided in a small cove which was surrounded by the murderers who shot the Chinamen down with long-range rifles. Some of the bodies floated down the Snake River as far as Lewiston, Idaho, where 10 corpses were found. Because the miners were only in the country for temporary work, they had no legal documents, so 23 of them remain nameless. One of the suspects, and a prominent local citizen, Frank Vaughn, who was arrested and then released after paying a $1,000 bail for horse rustling, insisted that neither he nor 3 others played any role in the killings. The ringleader, Blue Evans, was arrested in Wallowa County just 5 days after the massacre for horse rustling. 2.5 weeks later, Evans escaped from the second floor of the Fine Hotel in Joseph, where he was being held, and fled. He was never found.
Because local law enforcement was making little progress in the case, the Sam Yup Company dispatched 2 agents to track down the escaped killers, even offering a staggering $1,000 reward for the apprehension of them. Their efforts were unsuccessful. On August 30th and 31st of 1888, Wallowa County staged its first murder trial in the county courthouse in Enterprise, Oregon. The gang was tried for the murder of 10 Chinese miners, an initially mistaken figure based only on the number of bodies that washed ashore near Lewiston. U.S. Senator James H. Slater of the nearby city of LeGrand was completely outraged with the events that happened and appealed to Washington, D.C. for help. Nothing came of it. The court rendered not guilty verdicts for all 7.
I don't think anybody doubted that this gang had killed the Chinese. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The question was, would a white jury convict white men, some of whom were fairly prominent in the community, convict them for the murder of minorities, in this case Chinese.
Shortly after the trial, one of the defendants, 16-year-old Robert McMillan, confessed to killing 34 Chinese on his deathbed. Following the trial, 2 more defendants relocated into neighboring counties or to the neighboring state of Idaho to escape judgment and shame. Some of the other accused, such as Frank Vaughn, were still viewed as upstanding citizens and important founders of the county, and their names can still be found on the archway outside of the courthouse today.
The incident was hidden almost immediately after the trial in a locked safe in the basement of the courthouse, hiding the shameful part of the county's history. The crime sparked almost no media coverage in the area. The Hells Canyon Massacre is a clear example of the racial barriers and hatred faced by the Chinese in the American West. Despite discrimination and the constant threat of violence, thousands of Chinese immigrants would ultimately overcome these barriers to build railroads, mines, and clear land without any recognition.
Well, I think one of the consequences is that our history becomes more complete. We know, if we don't know what we've done, if we're not aware of our past, then our future is missing something. Or our present, we need to know the whole story of our lives and our country's history.
In 2005, the location was officially renamed Chinese Massacre Cove by the U.S. Board on Geographic Names, over the objections of Wallowa County commissioners. Each year, healing ceremonies, honoring not only the Chinese victims, but also diverse groups such as Native Americans and other minorities in the area who have experienced insufficient justice. Today, the remote site at which this atrocity was committed has a permanent memorial to those who were slaughtered for gold. It reads, in part, "No one was held accountable."